Welcome to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Hour number 3 of the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. We're with you every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Coming up top of the hour, Matt Brown and Mike Somich will have you for Ready, Set, Bet. And Matt Brown just chimed in, taking a look at the whole placements for today at the Masters, and this from Matt, and I'm sure he'll talk more about it coming up top of the hour. He said, Masters doesn't make many mistakes, but 16 pin placement, the 16th hole pin placement today is such a bummer, removes a massive amount of drama when every player just gonna play to 2-putt par. So that from Mr. Brown just a moment ago there on social media. And I'm sure Matt and Mike will have plenty for you coming up at the top of the hour as they get you into the final round of the Masters. And they will be on the air, as will the folks on Live Bet Sunday, as Rory and Bryson DeChambeau go for a gold jacket. You know, it is, I'll say this, and, you know, credit to a bunch of shops, but I always, you know, keep the interface up of DraftKings. And, you know, as I think most of you know, we can't bet DraftKings here in the state of Nevada, but as a reference, and certainly many of you across the country can bet on DraftKings, their live odds for most sports, but especially golf, it's very intriguing to look at, and curious to see what the prices will be today, and you know when you're able to jump in at different particular prices. So right now, this is DraftKings, Rory McIlroy at -210, Bryson DeChambeau at +240. I just tweeted out a little while ago, taking a look at the yes/no price at -213 on Rory and +183. We have seen movement on that number towards Rory McIlroy on the yes. So the belief continues that Rory McIlroy will get it done. Back-to-back 66s out there on the course. So Rory McIlroy is the betting favorite, rightfully so, heading into the final round of the Masters. And we'll see if he's able to wrap up his career Grand Slam. But chasing him is Bryson DeChambeau, and here is DeChambeau as he gets prepared for Sunday at Augusta.
I think it's fun, feeling like you have to hit every single shot to the best of your ability, and you can't let off the gas pedal. You just got to focus and play the absolute best golf you possibly can. When you're leading, it's a little different. I've had those times as well, and you attack that a little differently, but for me, be chasing tomorrow, it'll be a fun test.
Yeah, no doubt. So there you go, Bryson DeChambeau getting ready, and once again, 15, 16, 18 birdies yesterday for Bryson. He was 5 back, now 2 back, heading into that final round against Rory McIlroy. Bryson's talked about it, and I think that is fair. Rory too, about the atmosphere down in Augusta, these two golfers being some of the most popular golfers in the game. We heard from Trevor Immelman of CBS talking about that earlier in the show. Rory McIlroy, what he expects from an atmosphere standpoint later today.
It's a pleasure to play in front of them and to have that atmosphere and to have that support. And, tomorrow when that final group's going to be, it's going to be a little rowdy and a little loud, and I'm just going to have to, settle in and, really try to, keep myself in my own little bubble and keep my head down and, sort of approach tomorrow with the same attitude that I've tried to approach the last 3 days with.
Rory McIlroy, on Thursday, I don't think many of us thought, maybe you did, I didn't, after what we saw at 15 and what we saw at 17, I felt like I was getting the side eye from Matt Humans being like, you did it to yourself. You bet on Rory McIlroy here, but he responded with that great round on Friday with the 66. Yesterday, a couple of eagles, had a couple of bogeys as well, but to get that eagle on 15, boy, felt like that almost locked it up, but Bryson, not too far behind, able to close it out. He had a 69 yesterday, so it's going to be must-watch TV today. Rory and Bryson going head-to-head there down at Augusta, and we'll see if one of those two golfers gets to don the green jacket for the first time in their careers. A couple of tweets from Justin Ray, who does a really good job with historical perspective on the Masters. He pointed out that the most rounds of 66 or lower in Masters history, Tiger Woods is number one. He has 8. Rory McIlroy now, after the back-to-back 66, he is now 7th all-time. Jack is has 6, and Jordan Spieth with 6 as well. So Rory McIlroy joining some rarefied air there from Justin Ray. Another one, lowest middle 36 score all-time at the Masters. 1997 Tiger Woods, 131 was his score from 97. 05. He was at 131. Nick Price in 1986, 132. And then Rory McIlroy, 132 with the back-to-back 66s. And we talked about the similar comparisons of the 05 Tiger victory at Augusta to Rory in this year, being outside of the top 10, being 7 strokes off the lead after the first round, and then after the second round being in third place. So some similarities from 05 to 2025. And if you're a Rory backer, you're certainly hoping that history is on your side from 05 to 25 versus 11 to 25 when Rory McIlroy entered the final round with the lead at 12 under and shot an 80 on Sunday. So a couple other notes from Justin Ray regarding Bryson DeChambeau. Bryson, strokes gained short game at the Masters. How about this? From 2016 to 2024, he ranked 84th of the 93 players with 10 or more rounds. This week, he is first in strokes gained short game. And then if Bryson were to win today, he would be the first reigning U.S. Open champ to win the Masters since, you guessed it, Tiger Woods back in 2001. He would become the 4th all-time to win the U.S. Amateur, the U.S. Open, and the Masters, joining Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and Tiger Woods. So there you go. A lot of interest out there, intriguing storylines, I should say, setting up for Bryson and Rory heading into the final round of the Masters. Once again, that'll get going at 2:30 Eastern. Rory, odds-on favorite right now. If you like Bryson, you can get him around plus 250 or so out there in the betting market. All right, more on golf as the show goes on. We'll talk a little NBA with Zach Cohen coming up at the bottom of the hour. But up next, we're going to talk to Thor Nystrom. We're going to talk some NFL draft with Thor. And as we're getting closer, we're less than 2 weeks away from the draft. Looking at some of these betting markets, the number one pick is pretty much locked up at this point in time. It seems like it will be. Well, it's almost a foregone conclusion. It's going to be Cam Ward. Gets a little bit more interesting when it gets to the second and third selection. I do think we're getting close to saying you can pretty much write in Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter going 2 and 3. I know Matthew Friedman over at Fantasy Life, who I respect his opinion for the NFL draft and his betting prowess. He, in his latest mock, actually had Shedeur Sanders being the second overall pick. But I want to bring up Shedeur because as we look at his over-under for draft position heading into the NFL draft, he is the most notable name heading into the NFL draft. And I think from a betting standpoint, it brings some kind of interesting discussion. So right now at DraftKings, I'm pulling it up as they have added more draft positions, which is appreciated here. But Shedeur Sanders over-under on draft position is 8.5, minus 260 to the over. And 8.5 makes a lot of sense, right? With the New Orleans Saints sitting there at number 9. But you start to see some of these mock drafts. And look, I have not placed a bet on Shedeur's draft position yet. I would certainly lean to the over right now, but I don't know if I'm excited to lay 260. Maybe there's a different way we can attack that. But you look at some of the mocks that have been coming out more recently, and the one that certainly gained a lot of notoriety was Todd McShay. Todd McShay, now at the Ringer, put out his mock draft, and he had Jackson Dart going ahead of Shedeur Sanders. And what was another interesting note, this from Hayden Winks, because he put Jackson Dart there at number 2. He pointed out that the New Orleans Saints, no one of consequence was ultimately at his pro day. Actually, I misspoke. It was John Daigle at Establish the Run. I'm going to read you his rationale for the number 9 selection being Jackson Dart. You're starting to feel this movement, right, of Jackson Dart maybe being the 9th overall pick to New Orleans, knowing the uncertainty with Derek Carr. This is from John Daigle in his most recent mock. 34-year-old Derek Carr is suddenly, quote, dealing with a shoulder injury that threatens his availability for the season. And even if healthy in December, can be shed in 2026 to save $9.6 million against the cap. The only hang-up here is New Orleans' dire roster and cap space, which is 32nd in the NFL, potentially nudging Kellen Moore to begin his regime with the best player available and eventually take Texas phenom Arch Manning in year 2. Here's the interesting point from John Daigle in his mock draft on Establish the Run. Dart is the pick over Shedeur Sanders since no one credible in the organization attended the latter's pro day, meaning Shedeur Sanders. So Jackson Dart, that market of him being the second quarterback selected has significantly shrunk since we heard from Todd McShay on his mock draft. It was north of $3 for Jackson Dart to be the second quarterback selected. At this point in time, Shedeur's still the favorite at minus 250, but Jackson Dart now at plus 185. More on the draft coming up on the other side from Thor Nystrom. But hey, just a reminder, we've got a great deal courtesy of Derek Stevens. If you want to come out to Vegas, hang with us, stay at the Circa, the D, or Golden Gate, use the promo code VSiN15 to get 15% off your stay. Head to circalasvegas.com.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. I'm Tim Murray, live from the Circa Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. Final day of the NBA season. Zach Cohen going to help us make sense of the last card of the regular season, and we'll peek ahead to the postseason as well. So Zach's going to do that with us here in just a little bit, but we are less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, which has become a really fun event to bet. That being said, it becomes a little trickier, certainly over time, because sportsbooks don't like to put up that many offerings for us to beat them with. As Derek Stevens let us know last Thursday night on VSiN Primetime, he hates booking the draft because they always lose. He says they've never won an NFL draft night. So that is certainly an evening why they don't like putting it up. But we as the bettors, we love it. I know our next guest does it as well. He is Thor Nystrom. Always love picking my guy Thor's brain when it comes to college football as well as the NFL draft. And Thor, a lot of discussion right now regarding the number 2 quarterback to be selected. There seems to be a little bit of buzz growing on Jackson Dart possibly going ahead of Shedeur Sanders. And I was just going through John Daigle's most recent mock draft and why he went with Dart ahead of Shedeur Sanders at 9, because the Saints didn't really send many people of anyone of importance to Shedeur Sanders' pro day. What do you make right now of what we've been hearing regarding Shedeur versus Jackson Dart and who could be the second quarterback selected a week from Thursday?
Yeah, we're in the thick of silly season now, and it's difficult to sort of unspool some of these different things. Like, I haven't bought a lot of the smoke with Shedeur Sanders all process, and then you wondered now, you have this extra team that has seemingly a quarterback need, with the announcement about Derek Carr, and then you have that weird thing with the pro day. We've seen in the past teams avoid players publicly being associated with them because they like them. And of course, we've seen it the other way as well. Then you also have the Jalen Milroe thing. Jalen Milroe being invited to the draft when they are trying to cut down the amount of guys that are there. They don't like embarrassing the guys that fall to the second round. There's got to be a mystery team in on Jalen Milroe as well. So he could be in play for QB2 as well. But the Saints, that becomes a very interesting spot at number 9 now in the draft.
Yeah, and, I was talking to Connor Allen yesterday regarding the news that came out from New Orleans. I don't know, Thor, and once again, we're getting into silly season, and a lot of these things that are going to percolate aren't going to come to fruition. But Why do you think the news came out when it did regarding New Orleans? Because, boy, it would have seemed to make a lot more sense for that organization to try to keep the Derek Carr injury under wraps until, I don't know, May, so they don't tell everyone, hey, we might not have a quarterback, so if you're the Browns, if you're the Giants, if you're the Steelers, whoever it may be, come up and try to jump us at number 9.
I'm very curious why that, it's the game within the game. And why did that come out at this time? Because, it puts all eyes on the Saints for the quarterback. Was that a leak, an unwanted leak on their end? Or was that a wanted leak because they're not going to take a quarterback, right? Like we don't know. We're not going to know until they come up on the clock on, at the number 9 slot. But yeah, you get the smoke screens. One of my favorite ones of all time was the 49ers telling everyone they were going to take Mac Jones when they were interested in Trey Lance. But we get it every process, and a part of the game is trying to ascertain what is the signal and what is the noise.
Thor Nystrom helping us break down the NFL Draft. Fantasy Life is where you can check his latest mock draft. It's pinned to the top of his Twitter profile as well, at ThorKU. The offensive line market is interesting, and I always wonder, Thor, if we get into like that groupthink mindset, and I think there's a little bit of groupthink going on with the Raiders and Ashton Jeanty, and we'll get to that here in a moment. But how do you look at the first offensive lineman selected market? Because Will Campbell is the favorite, the tackle out of LSU, but then you've got Membo out of Missouri, and also not too far back, we're starting to hear a little bit of buzz for Kelvin Banks. I don't know if he ultimately would be the first offensive lineman selected, but how do you look at first offensive lineman selected, and is there any bet for you on that market?
For me, Membo is the guy who I've been betting for that. And I have had Will Campbell as my tackle 3 the entire process. I've had him behind Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks has been weirdly slept on, at least in the court of public opinion in the media throughout this process. A former 5-star recruit who started he started right when he got on campus. For 3 years there at Texas at left tackle. And he doesn't have any questions with the arm length or the wingspan. 7 inches he's got on Will Campbell as far as the wingspan. I think he is a better tackle than Will Campbell. But Membo, to me, that is your tackle 1. For me, there isn't a ton of debate with that. I don't know what else he could have proved. Another 3-year starter in the SEC, dominant last year. He has all the measurables. He answered all those questions during the pre-draft process. So, but he would be the guy that I would put the money on.
Who is someone that you think, as we get closer and closer to the draft, is going to be kind of that buzz name, that riser in this draft class?
Well, I think the big, you mentioned Jalen Milroe. That's the one we're all trying to dig in, find like who is that mystery team, because the NFL doesn't make mistakes with this thing. So I think that is going to be the story of round 1. I think he's going in round 1, right? Like I don't know why else you would invite him to that event were he not. So he's the one that I'm keeping an eye on. And then the other one would be, potentially the storyline of the third running back getting into the first round. I'm just curious to see if that actually happens or not, but there's been increasing smoke on that as well.
All right, let's talk some running backs here. Thor Nystrom joining us, courtesy of our progressive guest line. Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders has been often mocked. You have it in your mock as well. Are you believing in this, Pete Carroll wanting that new Marshawn Lynch, or is this a situation where it just seems, I don't know, too easy, if that makes sense? He's around minus 130 or so to land with the Raiders. Where do you think Ashton Jeanty ultimately lands on draft night?
Where I'm definitely with you is I wouldn't lay the 130. Like with where those odds have gotten, I think, there's a shot to take a different position. I think there's also a shot. I think the better shot is that a team hops them in a trade with Jacksonville. I've heard some smoke about that. There's also Jacksonville also kind of likes Jeanty. I don't think that Jacksonville would take him, but you can't rule it out. At the one, I would be taking shots on some other teams if you were going to bet the Jeanty market. There's no value at minus 130 of the Raiders.
Thor Nystrom joining us here, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line, giving us some thoughts on the NFL draft betting market that is starting to pop out there. The wide receiver market initially seemed to get a little bit too cute. Matthew Golden was getting a little bit of that love. Are we at the point now where it seems pretty safe to say that Ted McMillan out of Arizona will be the first wide receiver picked?
Yeah, it's, with where that market went, I didn't think that there was, I don't know what the updated odds are on that, but yeah, like for me, McMillan's my wide receiver one. I did think that, when it was 2-1 with Golden, I nibbled on that a little bit, but beneath that, you can't go lower than that. I would still lean towards McMillan. Obviously the implied odds when it's 2-1. Right. Like I thought that was within our value range, but yeah, like right now I'm not touching those odds.
Yeah, minus 230 right now. I'm curious your thoughts on Emeka Egbuka, because I was looking at his over-under draft position, and let me double-check just to make sure it's still at what it was. I believe it was 29.5 was Egbuka. Yeah, juiced under at minus 150. Look, I love Emeka Egbuka, but once again, as I always say with the draft, it's not what we think, it's what the league thinks. What are you hearing about Emeka Egbuka, the Ohio State wide receiver? It's not a great draft, wide receiver class. Do you think he has his name called in the first round? And if so, is it in the first 29 picks?
I think I would go over that number, and Tim, what you said, how you laid that out, that I would agree with that. That's my thinking on this. Do I think Egbuka is a top 28 prospect in this class? Yeah, that's where he'll be on my board. But yeah, you go through the thought experiments, like with my recent 2-round mock that was on Fantasy Life, and he gets down into the second round. You start going team by team, and then with the decisions, the path to both him and Burden being pushed out of the first round, it becomes a lot clearer, which is also why I started nibbling a little bit on the under 2.5 receivers. Earlier this process, I didn't think it was going to go down like that, but it's, with where we are. And then some of these teams that need receivers and you do the thing of this guy against this guy. I think there's a real path to Emeka Egbuka getting pushed out of the first round. In my mock draft, I had him going to the Titans. We know that Cam Ward really likes throwing to a slot receiver. You can ask Xavier Restrepo about that. It's possible that Egbuka falls to the top of the second round, but yeah, he won't have to hear his name called on Friday if he does.
He's Thor Nystrom. No one better on covering the NFL draft. Thor, always appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much, Tim.
There he is, Thor Nystrom, Fantasy Life. Make sure to check him out on social media at ThorKU. It's the final day of the NBA regular season. A lot has been already figured out for the NBA playoffs, but there's one very important game in Golden State, and we'll talk about that with Zach Cohen next.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
Keep it rolling here. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. I'm your host, Tim Murray, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. Final round of the Masters is underway. Of course, we won't see Bryson and Rory until about 2 hours from now when their round will start. But been keeping you updated on who's been out there and playing well. Hideki Matsuyama had a great front nine as he was 4 under through the first 9 holes today. And we will see the rest of the folks out there. Daniel Berger off to a good start, 2 under. He's now 1 under for the tournament. And Joaquin Niemann and John Rahm just began their final round. So certainly guys to keep eyes on. Mentioned Hideki Matsuyama, 4 under today through 12 holes. And Brian Campbell, 5 under through 13, so he's up to T27 as he has 6 birdies on so far in his final round. Rory and Bryson, once again, 2:30 is when they get out there. Corey Connors and Patrick Reed at 2:20, and last year's champ, Scotty Scheffler, he will tee it up today at 2 p.m. Eastern time. All right, let's head back to our Progressive Guest Line and welcome in Zach Cohen. Of course, you can read all his content over at VSiN.com, one of the great NBA minds here at VSiN. And, it's kind of a tricky day, right, Zach? I texted you last night seeing if you would come on the program. You're like, yeah, I don't really know what's going to unfold today, but I want to hit on a game that we haven't really talked a ton about, and it's kind of thought to be almost a foregone conclusion that Denver is going to take care of business against Houston. But it looks like right now that Houston is going to be playing the bulk of their players. So is this a spot to maybe look at Houston a little bit on sale? How are we looking at this spot here today?
Yeah, I mean, I'd feel a lot better getting the points with Houston than I would laying them with Denver. I think one thing that I've found interesting when looking at this last day is it's almost being priced like it's the end of, the in-season tournament where it looks like the favorites need to win by a lot when they actually don't really need to. They just need to win the games. So you're seeing, the Timberwolves are favored by 22 against the Jazz when a 1-point win is good enough for them. I think the Nuggets favored by 9. Again, 1-point win is good enough. I don't really understand why they're expecting these teams to win by margin. Having said that, these people are a lot better at making lines than I am, but I would rather have the Rockets when they are playing their guys, especially with Ime Udoka being one of the most competitive coaches in the league and having a team full of guys that kind of mirror that personality. They're a very good defensive team. They play hard every night. If the starters play, 20 plus minutes, they're going to make it hard on the Nuggets for as long as they're out there.
Yeah, right now you're starting to see the market come back in on Houston as the market now sits at 8. Circa at 7.5. You can follow Zach on Twitter or social media at Betting on X as he is there. All right, let's get to the game of massive consequence, and that's the Clippers and Golden State Warriors. I took a little crack at the under here. We talked to JVT about this yesterday, where it should have that Game 7 feel. I think Steph Curry even alluded to it, really having a playoff atmosphere. Golden State wins. They avoid the play-in. If they lose and chalk holds, they could ultimately head to the play-in. So a lot on the line with the Clippers and Golden State trying to avoid that play-in. Right now, market has gone in on the Clippers down to 3.5. What do you make of this? Any prop angles you're looking at in Golden State and the Clippers?
Well, I think the under is a good call. Like you said, this is a really important game. These are two teams that are defensive-minded. Since, the Warriors got Jimmy Butler, they've been a top 3 defense in the entire NBA. The Clippers all season long, they've been second in adjusted defensive rating. So these are two defensive-minded teams, two teams that I believe are going to have trouble scoring against one another. Having said that, I have Steph Curry over 25.5 points. I think he could have a big game, even in a low-scoring affair, just because since they've gotten Butler, nothing has really changed. They're relying on Steph Curry, possibly even more, because I think that they lack a little bit of perimeter firepower. They need his 3-point shooting. So I think Curry's going to get up a lot of shots in this game. Not too worried about the thumb injury that he had wrapped up last game. Hit a couple threes after that injury. So I do think that if this game, if he plays in this game, he's listed as questionable. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to score 26 or more, which he did the last time he faced the Clippers.
All right, so a Steph prop over, and we'll hope we can get Steph over, but still go under the total. 220.5, by the way, if you have access to Circa, is available. 220 is the number market-wide from that total standpoint. The rest of the board, once again, it's kind of all over the place. You're trying to, play a little bit of motivation. We know the Eastern Conference is all wrapped up, so let's go dumpster diving here. Top of the hour, Washington at Miami. Do my Wizards show some fight on the last day of the regular season?
Yeah, that's the only side I have today, which is insane for a day with a lot of important games. I took Washington plus 8.5 against Miami. The Heat are resting Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, a few other rookie rotation players, including Andrew Wiggins. And the Wizards, they have guys out, but they still have a lot of the talented young guys like Sarr playing today. And I know a lot of people will say Washington's playing for nothing, but I wrote it in my VSiN column. They've been playing for nothing for a very long time. They're way more used to it than Miami is. And I know that there's, probably a sentiment that the Wizards probably need to lose this game. They're locked into being tied for the first best chance of getting Cooper flagged. Nothing is changing with that today. So I believe Washington is a little bit more talented than the Miami team we're going to see on the floor today. And I normally would factor in, this being the last home game of the year for the Heat, but I don't really think anybody's going to show up to this game. It's a bad game with a team that, doesn't have the greatest fan base in the world. I don't think there's going to be some type of huge home court advantage.
A Sunday afternoon in Miami, what would you rather do at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Go to the beach or go to Wizards Heat? I think you're onto something there. I don't know. I don't think this is going to be like the Masters today. I think the atmosphere in Augusta is going to be slightly better there than in Dade County. So taking the points with the Wizards. Just looking ahead, to what we've got on tap for the play-in for some of these series. Let's start with the two series prices prices that we know. Pacers around a $1.75 favorite against the Bucks, and then the Knicks are a pretty significant favorite around minus 420 against the Pistons. Anything of interest there in those two Eastern Conference series that we know already are locked in?
Yeah, I absolutely love the Pacers. I grabbed it at minus 160 the other day. I don't really know what this line is. I think that there maybe is an expectation that maybe Damian Lillard comes back from the blood clots, but I haven't seen personally any positive reports on that front. I don't really think they're going to risk his long-term health to rush him back. And I just think that Indiana, based on what we've seen since December, has been a much better team than Milwaukee. Obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo will be the best player on the floor in that series. That's something that's always difficult to deal with. But every other player, when looking, ranking the rest of them, really feels like the best players are on the Pacers. And I believe Indiana's the better coach team with Rick Carlisle. We've seen this playoff matchup in a couple of the recent years with the Pacers coming out on top over some banged up Bucks teams. And Indiana's going to have home court advantage too. So I really think the Pacers should get the job done in that series.
Yeah, that price right now, $1.75 at DraftKings. We got the two play-in games that we know of. Obviously, today we'll find out the Western Conference play-in games, and from that the pricing standpoint. So we've got Atlanta at Orlando on Tuesday night, Miami at Chicago on Wednesday night. So that's the 7-8 game on Tuesday night. Orlando right now laying 5 in this one against the Atlanta Hawks. Any early thoughts on what to expect Tuesday night in Orlando?
Yeah, I'm going to be writing this up in a few hours, so it'll be up at VSiN.com. I kind of like the Hawks +5. I just think this Orlando team has had its ups and downs in the second half of the season. I do like what they do defensively, obviously, but I think, in a tightened up, close game, I think the Hawks are going to play a little bit better defensively than we've seen throughout the year, and I trust Atlanta to score a little bit easier than Orlando down the stretch. So having Trae Young in that type of game is going to be massive, and I do think that the Hawks have the type of size on the perimeter to kind of bother Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. So I think that taking the 5 and maybe even sprinkling the money line is a good call with the Hawks. I think the Magic are a very flawed team that got into this situation because of a really good start to the season.
Before we wrap here and make sure to check it out, all his work over at VSiN.com, as he just alluded to, we're going to have some columns up, no doubt, once we get series prices. As we look at the West, and there's a lot of scenarios to play out here, is there a particular series that you're kind of hoping to see from a betting standpoint when the seeding is wrapped up today?
Yeah, I'm really interested in the Western Conference futures market, as I've said to you and JVT a few times on primetime. I would like to see, honestly, if it's possible, the Clippers avoid, the 4-5 situation and actually end up in the play-in. I think if Clippers get into that 7-8 game, you never really want to be in the play-in, but I would trust them to get out of it. And at that point, I would love them against Houston in the 2-7 matchup. And at that point, you're also avoiding OKC until the Western Conference Finals. So a lot would have to happen. And it's weird to kind of root for a team to be in the play-in, but I have some Clippers futures, and I would feel a lot better about them being the 7 than being, the 4 or the 5.
Yeah, Clippers. If all the favorites win today, Denver, Minnesota against Utah, and Golden State beats the Clippers, Clippers would end up 7, and that could, to your point, lead to some interesting scenarios there if the Clippers were ultimately to face the Houston Rockets. Zach, always appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
There he is, Zachary Cohen at Betting on X. He's back in the Washington Wizards. Gotta love it here today on the final day of the NBA season. Hey, just a reminder, if you want to read all of Zach's content, check out all our best bets, check out those betting splits, head on over to VSiN.com/subscribe. We've got a great summer special going on right now, all the way through August 1st, just $59. It is VSiN. I almost said primetime, the Weekend Morning Line.
Tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
Wrapping things up here on a Sunday morning, final round of the Masters. Matt Brown and Mike Somich got you covered coming up top of the hour, and I'm sure Matt Brown will have plenty of thoughts heading into the final round of the Masters and before Bryson and Rory tee it up. I was just looking over my shoulder here at Circa, and it looks like a little bit of no money came in on Rory, as he is now down to minus 199 to win today. over at Circa. So that number has come down from minus 213. So a 14-cent move on the yes down to minus 199 for Rory McIlroy. The no price is, what is it, plus 174 right now. You like that? Live looking over my shoulder there at the odds board here at the Circa in downtown Las Vegas. So we will see how this all plays out. We've been talking it up. I mean, look, the way that Rory McIlroy played after the double on 15, the double on 17, to have a 66 on Friday to respond, and then another 66 yesterday with a couple of eagles, and now he's primed to win his first career Masters. But not too far behind, lurking there in that final pairing, is Bryson DeChambeau. And, you know, it's funny, they just a clip of them from Vegas, I believe one of the matches that they played out here in Vegas, just resurfaced, where Rory talked about, you know, getting Bryson back for the U.S. Open, and Bryson quickly said, well, you kind of did it to yourself. So, look, there's a lot of history between these two. The bad blood initially between LIV and the PGA, that has seemed to subside a little bit there from Rory, not as strong as he once was with those takes on the folks defecting to LIV. But the fact that we've got these two golfers going head-to-head, I don't really think you could ask for more from an entertainment standpoint, and the way that these two guys have been playing, the way that Bryson wrapped up his round yesterday. So I can't wait to sit back and watch. For me personally, I do have some Rory McIlroy outright top 5, top 10. I don't have any on Bryson, so I have to decide at some point if I do want to jump in on Bryson. Currently, the price at DraftKings is plus 240 on DeChambeau to win the Masters. And just looking down the board, and to kind of rehash what we heard from a handful of our handicappers, we had Wes on in hour 2. We had Jeff Seeley on in hour number 1. Jeff thought that Shane Lowry, if there was going to be someone who could make a little bit of a run today, he thought the plus 190 price on Shane Lowry at DraftKings was interesting for him to finish in the top 5. So that was certainly one way he was looking to bet. He thought if anyone were to make a run, and I know Jeff has been a big proponent of Ludwig Åberg. I don't believe he had any Åberg in his portfolio this week. He didn't like his form heading into the Masters, if I remember correctly, from his hit with Follow the Money earlier this week. But he did feel like if there was going to be one golfer today that could come back and pull off the upset, so to speak, it would be Åberg, sitting there at 40-1. And Ludwig Åberg will begin his round here in just a little bit. He will tee off at 2:10 Eastern time. He is 6 under, is Åberg. They're tied for 4th with Patrick Reed, and he will be in a group with Jason Day. On the course right now, Michael Kim off to a good start. Birdie on 2, birdie on 3. So if you have any Michael Kim exposure there in some top 20s, he is now sitting at 17th. I do have a little Colin Morikawa top 10 in my back pocket, and Wes Reynolds, I believe, said that he would look at a little Colin Morikawa to finish in the top 10 at even money would be a look for him. So I was able to grab that pre-tournament at plus 130. We'll see if that ultimately plays out. You know, it's funny because one of the bets that did not get there for me was Max Homa to miss the cut. Grabbed that at minus 130. I think it closed at some shops at like minus 155, somewhere in that ballpark. Not only did he make the cut, Max Homa, you know, give him credit, man. He had a pretty poor round 1, shot a 74, so he was 2 over. And I was hopeful, all right, maybe we could get him to miss the cut. Shoots a 70. So he's even par going into the weekend. And then yesterday shot a 69 and had an eagle on 13. Really finished strong. Yesterday did Max Homa with birdies on 15 and 16. So he's back out there at 1:20 Eastern today. And we'll see where Max Homa can ultimately finish, because his form coming in from everyone that you talked to and respected really hasn't been there. So a pretty strong performance so far through 3 rounds from Max Homa. All right, taking a look just at what we're seeing right now out there on the course. Tough day for Min-Woo Lee as he has dropped to 7 over. He is 3 over through 12 today. Also on the course out there today. Charles Schwartzel, who made the magical comeback in 2011. He's 1 under through 7 today. Wyndham Clark, 2 under through 10 today. He's 1 over for the tournament. A couple other notable names. Hideki Matsuyama got off to a really good start in his final round. Birdie on 3, 6, 8, and 9, so a 4 under 32 on the front 9. He is even par on the back 9 so far through 13 holes. Brian Campbell having a great day. He is 5 under for the day, even par, tied for 37th right now. And then Joaquin Niemann out there, he is 1 under through 2 holes, and Joaquin Niemann currently tied for 22nd right now. So we're all waiting, and can't wait to see how this all plays out. Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau. I do think he gets it done. I'm not going to lay the price, but I haven't taken any no. I'm going to roll with Rory. I do have the top 5 and top 10 too to hopefully be the fallback, and hopefully we don't get the absolute calamity that was 2011, where he had the double on 10, ended up with an 80 and dropped out of the top 10 despite having a 4-stroke lead going into the final round back in 2011. I don't think that's going to happen, but could I see Bryson winning? Absolutely. Bryson has been playing spectacular golf, but I think this, if we could have asked for a pretty intriguing final round pairing to have Rory and Bryson with their history, how the U.S. Open unfolded, just a year ago, to have these two going head-to-head in that final matchup with Rory having a 2-stroke lead is going to be great drama, certainly to watch. And we'll have you covered all the way through it. Ready, Set, Bet coming up with Mike Somich and Matt Brown coming up top of the hour. They'll have 3 hours with you. Live Bet Sunday from 4 to 11 p.m. as well. So we will have you covered for the Masters week, from an in-day betting standpoint. All right, a couple things to put a bow on the show here. My best bet for today, I will play under in Golden State and the Los Angeles Clippers. Tons on the line in this one with trying to avoid the play-in. So the Golden State Warriors, if they win, if chalk holds today, so the Nuggets right now, 8-point favorite against the Rockets. Worth noting, as Zach just pointed out, it seems like the Rockets are going to play most of their starters here in the final game of the regular season, despite having the 2 seed locked up. If the Nuggets beat the Rockets as a 7.5-point favorite, if the Clippers beat the Warriors as a 3.5, the Warriors beat the Clippers as a 3.5-point favorite, and Minnesota wins over Utah as a 24-point favorite, your seeding would look as this: Denver 4, T-Wolves 5, Golden State 6, and Clippers 7. But Clippers only a 3.5-point dog here, and I think you're going to get a pretty good war between Golden State and the Clippers. So this will be a fun way to wrap up the regular season here with Clippers and Warriors at around 3:30 in the East. So I did play under in that one. We know the Thunder, Rockets, and Lakers have all locked up and secured that spot. I did want to clear one thing up because I put a bunch of things up on social media and curious to see what people's thoughts were on this. So I put together my top 10 quarterbacks heading into the year, and I put Arch Manning at 8, and the rationale was he started 2 games just a year ago, and it was hard for me to have him at number 1. So my number 1 quarterback heading into the upcoming college football season, with the news coming out that Nico Iamaleava will not be at Tennessee, I rolled with Cade Klubnik. I'm buying, I wouldn't say low, but I'm intrigued by the prospects of DJ Lagway. The one omission I'll point out here that I clearly made a mistake on, and I don't know if I'd still put him in my top 10, but he'd certainly be in others receiving votes, would be Damon Williams from Washington. Really strong finish to the season, super athletic quarterback, and I think he could definitely crack the top 10, but very well at least should have been top 15. The other pieces that I had just missing out: John Mateer of Oklahoma, transfers from Washington State to go to pair up with his former OC. Miller Moss, I think, could have a big year with Jeff Brom in Louisville. Sawyer Robertson at Baylor, I think he's going to get a lot of buzz. Luke Altmaier back for another season at Illinois. Rocco Becht at Iowa State, and Avery Johnson at Kansas State. And Todd Furman, who joined the program. And by the way, Todd, his best bet for today, he did think the Edmonton Oilers were a little bit on sale today. So that was something that he was looking at against Winnipeg. But I thought he made a good point about Dante Moore out at Oregon, knowing that offense with Willie Stein and that talent pool there at Oregon. I think Dante Moore, while not on my top 10 returning starters, might be one of the more intriguing prospects heading into the upcoming season. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Coming up next, Mike Somich and Matt Brown, they're going to continue to get you ready for the final round of the Masters. Does Rory finally don that green jacket? We'll find out later on today.